Welcome, everyone, to episode 8 of Marked Out Radio. I'm Sean.
And I'm Dana.
And we have a busy show this week. Lots of stuff happened in the past week. We had a great conversation with Ken last week, and you'll be able to hear the second part of that interview next week. But we had a couple of signings and a couple of events this week that we wanted to talk about, which will then lead us to kind of a bigger conversation. So I guess, Dana, I wasn't there, but you had a signing with Joe Hendry of TNA and NXT fame, and I think you have some interesting stories about it. So how'd that go for you?
Yeah, we were with Joe Hendry. You weren't there, obviously, but I went, and friend of the show, friend of the brand, Ira Nobler joined, as he often does, to lend a hand, which is always appreciated. And it was interesting, to say the least. First of all, Jerry Sorrentino, who had him booked originally at the Wrestling Universe, and then it was moved to Mario's Pizza after Jack had some health issues he was dealing with. Jerry did everything he could. He made it as smooth as possible. Jerry was awesome to work with. Joe, on the other hand, was a little challenging, a little difficult. So Joe arrived, and he's a great guy, like in the sense of how he carries himself. I could absolutely see why he's successful in the promotions he works in. Like when he got there, Rico of WWE fame of like 2005, 2006. Remember him?
I do. Was it 05, 06? I thought it was earlier than that. I don't remember. What it was? Yeah, he was Rico Constantino, and then he was Rico,
yes.
and he was okay, I remember.
And the first thing that jumped out at me about Hendry was he walked in and he was like so polite and respectful with Rico, introduced himself. He's like, I'm Joe. He didn't assume like, oh, he must know who I am because I'm a big deal and I'm trending all over, TikTok and Instagram. He was very humble with the veteran. He like didn't want to walk in front of his table because he was still in there signing like publicly because he didn't want to get in his way. So I could see like he carries himself well. I assume that's how he carries himself in the locker room. And on that level, he was great, but this he was difficult. And that's the nature of this business. We choose to be in this business. Some talent you deal with are going to be more difficult and challenging than others. We had
real talk. So for someone who, and I'm going to be honest, because when I first, when we first started doing signings, my first private signing was actually Tom Kenny. Right? You did some before that. My first private signing was Tom Kenny, the voice of SpongeBob. And so maybe I was a little bit spoiled because Tom Kenny was just so engaging and so funny and so friendly and so fast, but also accurate, and was just a professional on a level that was pretty much unmatched since then for us anyway.
He's a gem.
That when thinking about, when you're hiring someone to do a private signing like that, my vision for how this was going to go was they were all going to go like Tom Kenny, where Tom Kenny is like, okay, guys, what do you want me to do for the next hour while I do this for you? And he did whatever you wanted because you were, paying his fee there. And so when you say, just to be clear for people who've never done this before, when you say someone was difficult to work with, what exactly does that mean?
Okay, great question. He was, well, first of all, he was in a rush, and that's never what you want as a vendor, as a promoter. You want the stuff to get done properly. Obviously you always have to be quick about things. You can't take forever. But he was rushing with nowhere to rush. There was no reason to rush. We had time before the public signing started. I tried to slow him down. I explained to him what we needed. And he gave his signature in general is kind of what it is. I think the signatures he gave us were on par with his signatures anywhere. That's just the way his signature is. A lot of the newer era talent, that's the way they sign. It's a very quick, kind of sloppy signature. But where I was sort of taken aback was we had a couple of personalization inscription requests. And we always make it clear on the website that we can't guarantee that they will get done because you always have, for every 99 smooth signings you have, there's going to be that one that's going to be difficult.
And to be fair, there's a difference between, just for the uninitiated, there's a difference between personalization and inscription requests. So talent is typically fairly enthusiastic about doing personalization requests to Jimmy, whatever it is, because personalization requests, they know, are on items that are for a real fan. They're not intended to be resold. There's someone who, it adds an extra layer of parasocial personal interaction. And so there's the talent is almost always happy to do it. Inscriptions are a little bit different. Sometimes people get all kinds of crazy ideas of what they want the talent to write. Sometimes it's really long and it's onerous to do. Sometimes it's complicated. Other times it's simple, former world champ or something like that. Though inscriptions run the gamut from, 5 times world champion to people writing novels on a piece. And so you weren't really asking for men. There was one inscription really that you tried to get him to do. The issue was mostly even with personalizations, which was odd because he kind of gave you grief about that, right?
Yeah, like the one personalization I thought he would do without a problem. No, sorry, inscription. The one inscription I thought he would do without a problem was a 2 blank "thank you for your service." Now, typically for most people, like you're trying to make a Veterans Day, someone who served in the armed forces, you would just say, whatever, I'll do it. He quickly said, oh, I can't do all that. I can't do all that. So I'm like, well, how about just personalization to, the person's name? And he did that. Like, there was a little bit of a sigh, and then he did it. And then there were maybe 4 or 5 other personalizations. And what he did, it was very, very quick, but it was almost to a point where I would say over half of the personalizations ended up being on his own head, on the picture. He would put it on his own forehead, which is not ideal. People don't usually want the signature or anything to do with the signature on the body. And it has to be on part of the body, not the face. So that was
what you're saying is, and let's be clear, it almost seemed like he put the personalizations on that spot a little bit spitefully.
Yeah, it felt like that because like we were just making conversation, and he was asking me what'd you sell these for? And you could see you could just hear the wheels turning in his head. I think he's the kind of guy. He's very business oriented. I think he wasn't necessarily thrilled that someone other than him was making money, and it should all be It's a weird type of feeling certain people have when they're in this business. The true pros, as we've discussed, they understand that sort of a relationship that has to be existing where everyone makes money, them included, and that's how they keep making money. Then you mean
you didn't just run the private signing for fun?
Not just for fun, no. But you see, I got the feeling he was kind of trying to sandbag because he didn't really want to do the personalizations. And whatever, that's fine. It's not my first rodeo. Of all the prints he did for me, I think there was one smudge because of how quick he was moving, which was on one of my pieces that I was selling later. So that'll be a bargain special for someone down the road where I'll sell that probably for cost. But he did everything that he signed everything. I'm not trying to throw him under the bus. Jerry Sorrentino did everything possible to make it happen. That, you guys don't even realize how close that came to not happening. He was not doing privates and bulks at the other stops. Jerry had to get on a conference call with him and his agent to even smooth that over and negotiate that all in, because he was, he was just, he was difficult.
It's funny, if you guys listen to the conversation that we had with Ken, we were alluding to some of this stuff last week because that was fresh in our minds about, it's just an interesting thing when you have a talent who is not a millionaire, that these guys are not making a ton of money, who in theory should be chomping at the bit to get these bookings while they're red hot and to, on some level establish relationships with people who are going to continue to book them. And it's like, now you're looking at Joe Hendry going, all right, we'll see how much I can make on him. And is it worth the headache ultimately
Yeah.
in the future?
Like I've heard he has a couple more dates lined up, with vendors I work with. So, considering how hot the pre-sales were, it would be a no-brainer to do it again, make new edits, do it again. But I'm kind of hesitating now. And like the last little tidbit, I had, like, for people that actually, I'll just explain it because I don't know if people really understand this fact because it's kind of niche. There's the figure type, the major bendies. These are resealable packages. So what people do, myself included, he has a major bendy coming in a couple of months. Major bendies made by the Major Pod Group, Brian Myers, Matt Cardona, Knick. Anyway, he has a major bendy. Joe Hendry has a major bendy coming out soon. Looks great. I had a friend of mine, Jeff Seltzer, friend of the show, reach out to me, and he wanted his bubble done. I wasn't going to charge Jeff, and he was nice enough to send me 2 extra bubbles for myself. One I'll keep, one I would sell. So I had 3 little like bubbles in my crate with the prints. And when I got done with the prints, part of my, order, part of my piece count, I pull out the bubbles and Joe's like, what are these? So I said, oh, it's the bubbles for the major bendies. So he's like, oh, that's not part of the deal. So I just kind of look at him like surprised. Like I didn't think, 3 bubbles was going to really be a problem. And then he's like, did my agent tell you that this was part of the deal? And I said completely honestly that I was, 50 autographs. I was not really told anything more than that. And then I said to him, I said, listen, full disclosure. I said, 1 is for a friend at no charge. 1 is for my personal collection. 3rd one, I will be selling. I said, do with it what you want. If you don't want to do it, I understand. And to Joe's credit, he's like, well, I got to talk to my agent for the future. He figures are completely different. That's not part of the deal, but you didn't know that. He didn't tell you that, so I'll do it. And I appreciated that. That was nice of him. He could have just told me to kick rocks on the bubbles, but he did the right thing. But
it is just kind of funny in this new world where you have a guy who's hasn't even been signed to a major contract going, figures weren't part of the deal, and you're like, dude, what is going on here? To me, I don't know. To me, when you have a guy, and I don't mean to be a jerk here, but that's part of my personality, I guess. But when you have a guy whose annual salary is lower than mine, who's going, I don't know if I should be signing this one. It's like, look, dude, you're trying to become a big time star here. You're not there yet, right?
Yeah.
Come on. What are you doing here? You want to extract a couple of extra nickels? Really? That's what you want to do? And look, again, the saying "penny-wise, pound foolish" exists for a reason, and that's again we were talking about it with Ken last week. I think we go into it further in the episode with him next week. But a lot of these guys are penny-wise, pound foolish. They're out there chasing the nickel without realizing that they're costing themselves the dollar. By doing that. And that's fine. Look, God bless him. If he becomes a big star, cool. And if he flames out tomorrow, then he's going to be chasing those $750 bookings again. Then, then he can go kick rocks. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with a guy like that. But I appreciate that you managed to get that done. And you definitely had a better attitude about it than I did. When I heard you telling me the story, I was like, come on, dude, give me a break. It's not, the funny thing is, right. You deal with a big star and they don't give a crap about half this stuff. Anyway, that's that.
Yeah. Think about Bret Hart from 2 weeks earlier. We had Bret Hart 2 weeks earlier, couldn't have done more for us. And then you have someone who's new and it's like pulling teeth.
Bret Hart would have signed my ass if I put it in front of him, and that's just the God's honest truth. He didn't care,
he would have added both Hall of Fame years too, because they're both important.
That's right, and it's just a difference in attitude and professionalism, and maybe I guess youth is wasted on the young, right? And then they really don't understand how to build relationships, and that I understand. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's going to be the next Rock. He'll be the next Dwayne Johnson, and then I'll be eating crow, and that's fine if he does. Yeah, I'm okay with that. But that same day, actually, the same day as the Joe Hendry, I know you were under the gun time-wise that day because we were headed for the first night of the U.S. leg of the Russell Crowe music tour. So I know a lot of people didn't even know this was happening. But for the past couple of months, Russell Crowe, like the actor, from the movie Gladiator and A Beautiful Mind, he was on tour in Europe with his band, and oh my god, I hear the Mr. Softy truck in the background. He was on tour with his band in Europe. He does have a band. I don't know if anyone cares about that, but and we noticed that people were posting to social media that they were selling these VIP passes, and he was just signing literally whatever people put in front of him. And there were stops in the UK and in Italy where people were getting 10 plus items signed per person in the VIP for Russell Crowe. So, Dana, I think you sent me the link, or I sent you, I don't remember the circumstances, but
I think I did.
Both of us were like, we gotta buy VIP to the first night he's in the US. Right. And we're both, I remember now, because the U.S. tickets went on sale while the European leg of the tour was still happening, and so we both raced up. And these tickets were not cheap. I think the VIP ticket was like $285 a person after fees, so not cheap. And we bought them we were with the hope that his behavior on the U.S. leg of the tour would mirror his behavior on the European leg of the tour. And we started getting excited and printing extra items and buying extra items and figuring that you could build up a couple of nice pieces for your collection, and also make a couple nickels on an event like this. And then the VIPs sold out quickly, and we got scared. I think it's safe to say, we can talk about this, we got scared that every night in Europe on his tours, people posting on social media, every night there was someone getting 10 plus items done. And our concern was that Russell Crowe's largesse, his generosity, would be killed before he made it to the States. And that's something we were joking about. We said every grapher, every autograph hound, every dealer from the tri-state area is going to be at that first show in New Jersey, because the New Jersey show was the first show of the U.S. leg. Everybody was going to be there with, boxes of stuff. How am I doing so far?
I mean, you would think we were like Miss Cleo as far as how we saw the future. That's pretty much what it was.
We roll up. We roll up and we park. And by the way, Asbury Park, New Jersey is the strangest place. So if you've never been there, they actually charge people to park on the street in front of their houses, which is insane. So we parked on the street in front of someone's house and had to pay. I've never done that before in my life.
No, that was wild. I was sure. I thought I was onto something when we drove past like the main strip and I saw the houses. That's usually where like the cheapskate in me shines. I'll park 14 blocks down. I'll walk past 7 crack houses, and I'll save $6 in parking. That's usually my ratio of thriftiness.
And to be fair, I think we dropped like $4 on park. It was a minimum amount of money to park anyway. But it was one of those things that you just kind of do a double take. So we get to walk up to the venue. It was at the Stone Pony in Asbury Park. It's a tiny venue, maybe 500 people. A lot of independent touring bands play there, and pretty much every grapher from New York and New Jersey, all the faces who we've seen 1,000 times before were there. And so we're cracking up because we predicted this was going to happen. We get in line, and the guy in front of us, real nice guy, but he had like 10 things. He had full-size posters. He had helmets and from Gladiator helmets and all kinds of cool stuff, boxing gloves, all kinds of cool stuff. And we had brought a modest 4 items each. I think I'll be honest, and we can talk about that. We brought 4 items each in the hope that Russell would behave the way he did in Europe. And do you want to reveal what happened?
Yeah, well, just to burst anyone's bubbles out there, he broke the Europe trend. He is down now to 1 item per person. and that's it. I mean, to his credit, it's rare when you have one of these meet and greets that you're allowed to get a personal item done. A lot of the A-list meet and greets on these little musical vanity projects, you're locked into getting some foolish item from the band signed as if you really care. No one was there to see Russell Crowe play music.
In fact, the dude in front of me, directly in front of me, he had just flown in from Pittsburgh. He had just been at Steel City Con the day before. He was there to get his photo op with Russell Crowe and leave right away and fly back home, which was pretty funny. So yeah, I mean, that was pretty. You could tell you could look at the crowd and tell who was there. It was every dealer, every autograph hound. That half the faces are people we knew. There were several marked out board members there. It's pretty funny that I mean, and again, not surprising. We pretty much called it. So yeah, we get in there and they right away they tell you 1 per, but an old marked out trick. And I don't know if it's a marked out trick, but it's a veteran's trick. When the promoter or whatever tells you 1 per, Dana, what do?
You always try for more.
Of course, you ignore what they say. When the promoter says these are the rules, you nod politely and just go on about your business. Because the truth of it is, as we've learned so many times before, the promoter will say one thing, but ultimately the talent will do whatever the talent wants to do. And so when they were saying 1 per, we're like, oh, okay, whatever. Maybe they said 1 per in Europe too, and we'll just put whatever in front of Russell. And then they tried the old promoter trick where they were like, hey, yeah, we'll hold your stuff. Anything more than your 1, we'll hold it so it doesn't get in your way. And we were like, you made up a funny excuse. No big deal. Or something like I forget what it was. But
I forget what I said, but
yeah, it was funny. But then we all brought up to them, and even the guy in front of me, I made him guinea pig it for us. I'm like, yo, bro, don't just cower away. Put all your crap in front of his face, and make him tell you no. Go for it, man. And he very firmly held to the 1. Now I know you're probably a little bit salty because I managed to get 2 because the guy directly in front of me didn't have anything to get signed. And he very, very, very generously offered to take one of my other items through for me.
That was nice of him.
Very, really, very nice. Unsolicited. I didn't even ask. He offered, and really, really awesome. So, dude, if you're out there, I did tell him about the podcast. So if you're out there, thank you so much for that. It's very much appreciated. But it was just funny, yeah. And then the whole thing is just really amusing because all the these poor band members. Russell Crowe's band is like 4,000 people. It's a band. I'm used to a band being 3, 4, or 5 pieces. The band legitimately had 15 people. It was so many people, and so when you get in there, I mean, obviously you stand next to Russell Crowe, and they take this incredibly zoomed out picture to get all of these people in there, and then everyone the first thing they did once they got their phone back was crop the photo.
Oh, yeah.
So that's really just the whole thing was just an exercise in hilarity because we're it was just this idea of this guy who was in Oscar-winning movies, who's playing this venue for 500 people, and he has this delusion that people want to listen to this music when it's just autograph dealers. The whole thing was really this it was like very, very high level comedy because it was almost like those old school comedies from the 30s or 20s where everyone has a completely different motivation and no one knows what the other people's motivations are, and everyone thinks they're getting something over on the other person. It was just a really silly, really funny thing. But at the end of the day, we were in line for maybe an hour and a half because they started late. And everyone got their 1 item and a nice photo with Russell Crowe, and $285 later, we were on our way back home.
Yeah, and I mean, think about it. If he did an NYCC or Steel City or anything like that, I mean, you're not getting a combo for $285. He would he would be a $400 or $500 name, I think, for a combo on the low to moderate side.
Probably in that ballpark. Yeah. I mean, I don't think that's something he seems interested in doing. I'm sure he's received offers. but yeah, and it's funny because I know in Europe he was really generous with the autographs, and here, in addition to at the venue only for the VIPs only being one per, he just didn't do anything for the dealers waiting outside the venue either. So I know a few of them got him at the hotel because they're relentless. They will just keep following him around until he does. But there was not a lot happening. It's so funny how someone goes on a different leg of a tour, goes to a different continent, and completely switches gears to how they behave. And if you do street graphing, and we really haven't talked about street graphing on this show basically at all. If you do street graphing, that's an incredibly and almost a strangely common occurrence where people will on one continent or in one geographic area behave totally differently than they do somewhere else.
Yeah, it makes me kind of wonder if Europe ruined him, or that was always the plan. Like you said, that he just acts different in Europe than he does in the States, and whether people would have come with full suits of armor in Italy or not, if he still would have been one per in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, it's the strictness of it is what struck me as really interesting. And granted, the line was extraordinary. I mean, there had to be 200 to 250 VIPs, which is hilarious because that just meant that, I mean, most of these guys were not staying for the show. So the concert itself was almost surely empty. But
I think Russell had a bigger crowd on stage than he had in the actual crowd.
And so, yeah, all these guys, they went home afterwards. And, you know, it was just an interesting idea that because you see the crowd being so huge, you know, you can only do one item per. In any case, we a lot of our negative predictions came true, but we did get what we paid for, which is not always the case for some of these things. So all in all, the Russell Crowe endeavor was pretty fun. So let's just, before we move on to the main thrust of this episode, let's do a little housekeeping. So if you are shopping for autographs, you want to check out www.markedoutcollectibles.com, our eBay store at marked-out-collectibles, or our sister eBay store at ny-collectibles. To contact us for any reason, you want something to say about the show or something to correct us on, or you have any thoughts or questions, please email markedoutcollectibles@gmail.com or join the Marked Out Collectibles official marketplace on Facebook. All right, so the main point of this show is that a massive con happened this past weekend. It was the 17th, 18th, and 19th, or 16, 17, 18, whatever this weekend was. Why don't I not remember? It was the 16, 17, 18. It was Fanatics Fest in New York City. So I know that we had some decent conversation on the Facebook forum about Fanatics Fest, and we promised we would read some comments left by readers and listeners on the show. So why don't you go ahead and we'll first read the listener comments, and then we'll give our own experiences of what happened.
Sounds good. First comment comes in from Peter Safchik. He said, photo ops were pretty much on par with NYCC. Crowded, chaotic, and disorganized. The problem with autographs was that unlike most other cons, most of the people were only signing for a very limited amount of time. No one had a dedicated booth. They kept switching out the talent, with most only signing for around an hour. Most other cons like NYCC, the guests get their own table and are signing most of the day. They take breaks to do photo ops and lunch, but most of the day they're at the table signing. FanFest totally oversold many autographs, including WWE stars, for the amount of time the talent was available to sign. I think that's Thank you for
that, Peter. Yeah, I mean that tracks with a lot of what our experience was.
Absolutely. Our next one is from Ross Smith. Ross said, if it wasn't for VIP access, I don't think it would have gone as smoothly. Wish they used more of the Javits Center to spread out the event like NYCC. I hear it. I hear that completely. But I mean, obviously, financially speaking, more of the building means more rent, more payola. So they didn't really want to.
the floor plan was not well laid out, and that's something that we'll talk about in a few minutes when we go into a recap of the show. But I know they had a particular vision for how they wanted the show to look. They executed that in the floor plan, and they ran into logistical problems because of that.
Yes. And our final comment comes in from Frank Ben Pensada. He said it was hectic, but he had a great time.
Yeah, I think this is gonna be a divisive show. For the Fanatics Fest is gonna be a divisive show for people because fundamentally they were chasing two audiences simultaneously. And I know a lot of these shows, the San Diego Comic-Con, New York Comic-Con, are also chasing those two audiences simultaneously. The problem is that San Diego and New York have much, much, much more experience at running a show than Fanatics does. And the way that Fanatics set up this show was they were trying to satisfy both audiences they have. I think they really did satisfy one segment of the audience at the expense of the other. And so I guess we'll talk about kind of how it was set up and what our experiences were and what I mean. I'm not trying to be cryptic, but what exactly I mean by that. So I guess you start, talk about what your experience was, what you did. We'll talk about what we did, I guess, and then and what we observed.
Okay. I immediately noticed walking up to the Javits Center, which for people that don't know, it's located on the west side of Manhattan, and it's not usually all that crowded over in that area if there isn't an event. So like you can instantly see by the people on the sidewalk, like heading in that general direction, who's going, to like NYCC, for example. And there was a lot less foot traffic. So I instantly knew, which I wasn't surprised about, that this was definitely not NYCC in terms of the crowd. I mean, it couldn't have been. They were using a much smaller piece of the Javits Center. Because they sort of expected less of a crowd. They had to have less of a crowd. But, it was similar to NYCC when we got inside. You lined up in that main, like, little queue area in the bottom. Less rows were filled up, obviously. And, it had that same, like, big con feel. You're down in that hole. You're lining up. You're waiting. The only thing that felt different was at NYCC when like those big, like when the rails collapse, like someone bumps it falls on the ground. The whole crowd like bursts into a cheer and they clap, and that's just like a little staple of the NYCC culture. When it fell here at Fanatics Fest, the crowd all booed, and that told me that was one of the ways that I sort of was. It was clear to me that we didn't have a lot of bleed over from NYCC to Fanatics Fest crowd. This was a very different crowd.
Yeah, and so our plan is always, I think this is, as someone who's an experienced convention goer, our plan is to figure out what we want to do first and race there as quickly as we can so we can be first in line or near the front of the line for that thing so that we can get that thing over with and then kind of always be at the head of whatever we want to do next. That's sort of the strategy. Is once you start falling behind on things you want to do, it's very hard to catch up. So you want to just get the quick things over as quickly as possible. So I know, Dana, you had a photo op at 10:30 with a Met.
Yeah, I had Pete Alonso, and the way they scheduled it, which was kind of a little concerning, they only allotted a 30-minute or 20-minute. I think it was 30-minute, a 30-minute block for a lot of the athlete photo ops. I figured they're going.
So the show began at 10 o'clock. That was opening. And Pete Alonso's photo op time was 10:30 to 11 or 10:30 to 10:50. It was something like that.
Yeah,
so it was to begin at 10:30. So I knew we were in trouble because at 10 o'clock we raced over to the photo op area. It was very confusingly laid out, so you weren't sure exactly where you're supposed to go. And the guys from Epic Photo Ops who were running the photo op area were actually just beginning to set up their equipment at 10 a.m. And this is one of those things that boggles the mind because those large vendors get access to the building hours earlier They were already set up on Friday. There's no conceivable logical reason why all their equipment, all their wires were taken down to be starting set. They were starting set up at 10 o'clock, which means they were not even finished setting up their equipment by 10:30 when the photo ops was supposed to start. I believe they didn't start lining up Pete Alonso's photo ops until almost 11. That's right?
Yeah, it was right around there.
So what ends up happening is you're already 30 minutes delayed because there is only a finite number of photo op booths. There's only a finite number of photo op line space, and now they're delayed by 30 minutes. And so, sure, Pete Alonso had a decent line for photo ops. There was also what's the guy, the Met McNeil.
Yeah, Jeff McNeil.
There were a couple other photo ops that morning. The gymnast girl, Livy Dunn, had one that morning. There were a handful of other smaller ones. The first big photo op was Hulk Hogan, where I believe they sold north of 500 photo ops for Hulk Hogan. And what happened was, because they were delayed in lining people up, they were delayed in lining Hulk Hogan. The fans waiting to see Hulk Hogan were crowding the area. They couldn't really get people organized because once people, and this is a bit of a human nature thing, once people get the sense that an area that an event is chaotic or mismanaged, people misbehave. And so people started to misbehave during the lineups. They were not listening to directions. They were standing in places they weren't supposed to stand. And the guys running the photo op booth were getting mad. But it's like, what exactly do you expect? If you present an aura of ineptitude, if you show yourself to be disorganized and late and poorly set up, then that's how people will perceive you. This is common sense. Right. So yeah, it was very frustrating because Epic Photo Ops is generally a very good company. The products they produce are high quality. The overall net cost to consumers for their service is relatively low. They're one of the good guys, in my opinion. Epic Photo Ops is one of the good guys, and they have a ton of experience with this. And I was really disappointed at how they ran that booth. And I know that what ended up happening later on was not necessarily their fault, but getting started at 11 when they should have been starting at 10, to me, is inexcusable. And I felt really bad for some of their lower level employees who were in charge of crowd control. There was one really, really sweet lady who was desperately trying to control the crowd. She had no microphone. She had no ability to, people were yelling at her and stuff. At one point I grabbed her. I'm like, listen, you're doing great. Don't let them get to you. But it was not the fans' fault. It was her employer's fault because they threw her out. They threw her to the wolves. Because people don't really understand. Again, most fans don't really understand the mechanism behind these things. They're going to scream at the first face with an official looking T-shirt on. And these shows, these cons, they do that on purpose. They find these poor saps to be frontline workers. They pay them nothing. A lot of times these are volunteers or very low wages. And then they absorb a tremendous amount of abuse from customers. And I mean, I guess that's like most aspects of life. A lot of jobs are like that. But in particular, you really see it at these cons, and they never give them any information. So a lot of times these people are like, I don't know the answer to your question. I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for you. And there was no good answer for why things weren't set up properly. So we managed to, because we were group one for Hulk Hogan, because we bought our tickets right away when they went on sale. We managed to finagle our way to the front of Group One. You would think, wow, I'm in the front of Group One. That means I'll go reasonably close to when the photo op starts.
That would be the natural thought, right?
That would have been the natural thought, and yet that did not occur, because something that's a growing trend at these cons, and it's definitely something that we wanted to talk about, and we're going to talk about it more in the future, but this is going to be a big focus of this episode, is the way the game has changed with line management at cons. Con lines historically have been broken up into two, at the big cons, have been broken up into two sections, the VIP and the GA. And the VIP people, the VIP lines are for people who bought a very expensive VIP ticket. And for most VIP tickets, NYCC, San Diego, Fanatics Fest. To me and to most collectors, the VIP ticket is just not worth the money. There's a tremendous premium for the ability to skip a little bit ahead in the line. That's fair?
Yeah.
So what's changed is most of these cons, in order to comply with a certain interpretation of federal law, they offer they call them ADA stickers or ADA accommodations. That ADA is the Americans with Disabilities Act. It's a law that was passed decades ago that's designed to protect people with disabilities from discrimination and provide accommodations for them in public spaces. It's a really important law. In my opinion, it's a really great law. The reason why we have handicap parking spaces in front of businesses and why businesses are required to do that, and the reason why certain businesses are required to have wheelchair ramps and things, is because of the ADA. It's a really important law. But what's happening is the ADA is being abused by fans at these shows. And so what the cons are doing is they're folding anyone with an ADA sticker into the VIP line. So in the first batch, and Dana can vouch for this because I counted the people in line. In the first batch of Hulk Hogan photo ops, there were 5 rows of fans that were lined up in the first batch. Of those 5 rows, 2 of them were VIP/ADA lines, which means a full 40% of, and by the way, there were not that many VIPs. Okay, of those 2 lines, maybe an eighth were VIP. They purchased the VIP ticket.
It wasn't very many.
No, the overwhelming majority of these first 2 of these lines were ADA people, and obviously, if someone is in line in a wheelchair, or someone has crutches, or someone is blind, obviously there has to be an accommodation to get them in and out of line quickly. Because just forget about the human side of helping someone out. Also from the practical side of, taking up space and negotiating quick turns and stuff, it's easy to get them out. But that's not what's happening in these ADA lines. What's happening is anyone can ask for and receive an ADA sticker at these cons. There is no proof that is required. You don't even have to state what disability you have. Nothing. Okay? There is absolutely no vetting whatsoever of these ADA stickers. And so what you have is, unfortunately, a sizable chunk of people who are taking advantage of the system and gaming the system. And now you have a situation where this huge cohort of people is jumping the line at every opportunity because of the ADA sticker. And I know these cons are in a tough spot, right? They have to provide disability accommodations. The culture is such now, and rightfully so, that, it's hard to always tell who needs a disability sticker and who doesn't. Not all disabilities are visible. Not all disabilities are omnipresent. Sometimes they appear intermittently. It is hard to know who needs a disability and who doesn't. Unfortunately, the people with disabilities are harmed by this because there are so many people who are. I mean, and just to be clear, I'm not talking out my ass here. There are people who I know, who I consider myself friends with, who I know a really long time, who I saw with disability stickers, who I know are not disabled. Okay, that is, I saw it with my own eyes. And so
you even saw a family member.
I did see a family. Let's throw it out there. I'm not particularly close to this family member, but I saw a family member of mine who I'm not close with an ADA sticker, who I know is not disabled because we're blood related, and who's jumping lines with this. Let's throw it out there. It was a family member of mine. And there were also, friends we know, people we know for a really long time who are doing this. And on one hand, you go, that's scummy, right? They're taking advantage of a system that is really not intended for them to use. On the other hand, Dana, what happened to many of the people who played by the rules and didn't jump the line for stars like Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill and Cody Rhodes? What happened to them?
They got completely and totally screwed.
So what happened was, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, for those that don't know, Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill I would say towards the back third of their like photo op time, and with a decent amount of people still on the line, they left. They were done. Their photo op time was the WWE talent, not Hulk Hogan, but the WWE talent was scheduled for, I believe it was 1 hour exactly for their photo op block, which was 3 times the size of the athletes, like the sports athletes. So that was good, but that's only good if Fanatics is, first of all, selling an appropriate amount of tickets that could actually be met in that time frame. And also if you have people that are playing by the rules and they're waiting on the end of, if you're group 5 and you're waiting on the end of group 5 GA and people keep coming in front of you that are on the ADA line, all of a sudden you're standing, you are literally out in the cold. And the word going around, which we will get into in a bit, there was a 40-40 club. For those of you that aren't aware, that was a club in New York City that Jay-Z had in the early 2000s. They had a little like pop-up shop type club in there that was, we'll explain more about it as the episode goes on, but it was basically a place where celebrities were sort of rubbing elbows and hanging out and causing a spectacle. And apparently the rumor is that Bianca and Jade Cargill, after leaving fans waiting in line for photo ops, were seen at the 40-40 club hanging out, and they were Jay-Z, Lil Wayne, etc.
So and this speaks to the sort of bizarre dual nature of this show, right? So there are 2 types of fans who they were appealing to. They were appealing to hardcore collectors because they had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar there selling autographs for $700. So obviously that your hardcore collector is going to be there. But there's lots of stuff for like kids and casual fans and just sort of celebrity gawkers to just look at, right? And those are different things because, look, I fully understand that if I wasn't a psychotic collector, that maybe I would go to these things, just kind of look at stuff and take it all in. And my first couple of years going to Comic-Con, when I didn't have any money, I would just walk around like taking it all in and, playing the games and doing the booths and, doing that kind of stuff. And if you paid like $60 to get into the show and didn't want to buy a single autograph or photo op and just play with a bunch of stuff and see cool things and gawk at celebrities at the 40-40 club, you would have had a freaking awesome time because there was so much to do for free. And I understand why. Look, big exhibitors like Topps and Lids and Sports Illustrated had these, WWE, they had these big exhibits there, and they paid thousands of dollars to advertise their brands to these fans. That's awesome for them. But the problem is that those types of exhibits really inhibited the hardcore collectors who really were spending thousands and thousands of dollars a person from getting everything they paid for. So one of the things they did for the show that boggles the mind is that 40-40 club you were talking about, they put it right between the photo op and autograph areas. So you couldn't, normally, if you go to a show like Comic-Con, they have the autograph and the photo op areas relatively next to each other because the people who buy autographs and photo ops are the same people. So it allows them to move seamlessly between both areas at Comic-Con. They're near each other. They put this stupid 40-40 club, because it had celebrities in it, quote unquote celeb, whatever. You couldn't really see them because it was lots of, clandestine stuff. They had like tons of security around it. They had all these stanchions and barriers so you couldn't get near it. And what it meant was that for schmucks like me, you had to walk all the way around the 40-40 club to get to the autograph section, then walk all the way around to get back to the photo op section. And so they detour you for like 10 minutes to get from section to section unnecessarily. The way that traffic flowed in this show made no sense. One of the things that these guys do when they make a floor plan for a show, you can't just put your exhibitors next to each other based on space. You have to envision how the traffic is going to flow. And nobody thought for a second how the traffic was going to flow. And so you had situations where, like in the autograph room, what Peter had mentioned, where you had, Barry Sanders was the first signer in section 1 of the autograph section. Okay. Barry Sanders had 300-400 people in line. And he made, so he went a little bit over his signing time. So the second person in that spot, I forget who it was, their fans have nowhere to line up because Barry Sanders is there. And there's nowhere for those people to go until Barry Sanders gets up and leaves. So then when Barry Sanders gets up and leaves, it was after Barry Sanders was, I think, Vinny Testaverde. So then Vinny Testaverde, then Hulk Hogan was third. So you had the people who were, Vinny Testaverde was signing, and yet Hulk Hogan people wanted to get there early to line up early for Hulk Hogan, but they couldn't because there was nowhere to go. Just asinine, just an idiotic thing. And it speaks to the inexperience of running it. You have to have dedicated lanes for people to line up in, or at the very least, some kind of overflow spot where people can line up in advance. It's just common. Yeah. That's how all these shows are run. They didn't do it at all. There was nothing like that.
They really didn't seem to have too much like thought in advance about like the collectors. One of their big taglines was where culture and collecting collide, which I have to admit they actually delivered on that. I came home from Fanatics Fest. My wife is not a convention goer. I dragged her to a couple of conventions when we first moved in together and got really engaged, all those steps of getting more serious. And Sean can attest, there was one Monster Mania. I thought she was going to murder me.
She was not a happy camper.
No, we had to wait late for Matthew Lillard. It was a whole thing. And I thought, forget Ghostface. I was more afraid of her at that point. So she's not a fan of these cons. She doesn't follow these con pages. This is not in her For You page. She's oblivious to what's going on at these cons by choice. And I came home from Fanatics Fest, and she goes, "Oh, babe, Little Baby was at Fanatics Fest." For those that don't know, Little Baby is a rapper. And Fanatics Fest was all over non-con pages. You had Jay-Z walking in and out every day. That was news. That was on all these different pages. Lil Wayne, different rappers, different athletes. They really did. They came as close as I've ever seen to making a convention cool to the people that don't go to conventions and wouldn't typically consider a convention to be cool. This was just mainstream, tangible news, which is not usually the case.
To me, I know we have sort of different views on this. I thought it was so odd, and I thought it was so demeaning. So the 4040 Club was there was it's hard to explain. There was a balcony almost where these people were, and you could kind of see up on the balcony into the balcony from the floor, but you kind of couldn't. And so there was this gaggle of people. So almost like the riffraff down below, kind of trying to gawk and stargaze and then look into peep almost into the club to see who was there. And there's something about that just, I don't know. It's very we're up here and you're down here. Now I know obviously there's a culture of celebrity and part of getting autographs and photo ops is sort of feeding into this culture. I understand. It's such an odd thing to look at for me, to see people sort of sitting and milling about and have their phones up and trying to catch a glimpse of celebrities mingling with each other. And when I say I have no interest in that whatsoever, I can't express that enough. Not only I have no interest in it, it turns me off on a very visceral level. And it's funny because what the other cons, and I know that this definitely attracted a lot of mainstream pop culture attention in a way that a Comic-Con wouldn't necessarily. But Comic-Con would never do something like that. If they bring in a celebrity, they make sure there's a way for that celebrity to interact with or speak to the fans. There were celebrities who were brought into the show who didn't interact with a single fan. They were just there.
Yeah, we'll get into the photo op guidelines that were in place that some fans weren't happy about. But I know what you're saying. The idea, even though we all wait in line to see a person with a heartbeat just like us, who breathes in oxygen just like us, that we are feeding into the whole celebrity culture. At the same time, the reality, or at least the perception, is that you have some degree of interaction. You're face to face, eye to eye, shaking hands with this person that is maybe larger than life in regular time, but in that moment, you're like interacting. There was no interaction there.
Right, and even with Comic-Con, even the big stars, the Robert Downeys and whatever, they'll do panels where they take questions from people, they speak to people, they treat them like human beings. That's part of the promotional game here. There was it was almost like there was a second world at the show where people were being hustled in to this spot in the middle of the floor in a way where they didn't even have to see the riffraff. It was like a Game of Thrones or something. It was really strange. It was really I was in line for, I can't remember who it was. I was in line for one of my photo ops, and like the security, I guess Travis Scott was being whisked to the 40/40 club, and security surrounded him, so you didn't even have to see any human beings, and they whisked him through the floor quickly to the 40/40 club where he had no interaction with people. It was just strange. And so that I understand what they were trying to do. I'm going to be honest, I don't know if this is a model that draws money. I mean, I guess it draws money for like general ticket sales. Maybe next year people will want to pay the $60 to see whatever celebrity. I just know that there were a lot of people who got their photo ops canceled. Bianca Belair, Jade Cargill, Cody Rhodes,
Jalen Brunson on Friday,
Allen Iverson, Dominique Wilkins. Their photo ops were canceled. And so people who paid perhaps for their children to meet this star who came here, some people traveled long distances, due to ineptitude and crowd management and overselling of tickets, they didn't get the chance to get what they paid for. And sure, they get a refund, blah, blah. But there's no reason why that has to happen. And it speaks to piss poor management, and it speaks to serving two masters and not really feeling the urge, the burn to give people what they paid for. Because to be honest, it really, really should rub people the wrong way that Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair could make enough time to sign autographs on Fanatics Live for their little web podcast thing, to do that, to sell stuff online, but not to fulfill their prepaid obligations to people. It's just foul. But it speaks to, look, a lot of people have said that Fanatics, that this is what Fanatics is, right? That the reason why they did this convention was to drive their own merchandise sales. Ultimately, the convention is secondary to the fact that they're driving merchandise sales. I get it. I understand what the reason is. At the same time, ultimately, you got to deliver to people what they pay for. If they pay for something, you have to deliver it. And you have to have plans in place that make sense.
If you prioritize building your own sales, if you prioritize the spectacle, like, I wouldn't even say that they tried to accomplish that. They did. They were all over like big time blogs and whatnot. They did create a spectacle outside of collectors. Mission accomplished. But when you are pre-selling photo ops, when you are pre-selling autographs, you have to know, well, I have this much time. If you want to have them on Fanatics Live and you want to have the talent doing all these different spectacle-related things, sell less photo ops, take less fans' money, make less promises to fans that you can't deliver. Because this, to me, showed that Fanatics doesn't understand the way a collector and a super fan and all these different groups of people that came together. A refund is not sufficient. You came from far and wide to get your photo taken with Cody Rhodes. You bought your ticket, you took off of work, you made travel accommodations, whatever you did you were there and you were excited and your child was excited and whoever you were with was excited. And all of a sudden, because you had Cody Rhodes on stage, you had all these different things that take away from the time, you don't deliver and you refund these people. That's not enough. That doesn't make up for the disappointment. That's terrible.
Yeah. And so I know there was a big hullabaloo that when, the WWE merchandise appearance deal, when it went from Fighterman to Fanatics, a lot of people said, well, Fanatics is a bigger company. They're going to be able to do more events. They're going to be able to bring out bigger stars. They're correct in one sense, but like anything else in this world, when you take something that was a small business more or less and you corporatize it, there are certain things that become more efficient. That's the unquestionable, right? It is always more efficient to shop at Amazon or Walmart versus a mom and pop store for 95% of the cases. But
Yep.
you also lose some important human component to it, because when you over corporatize anything, you gain efficiency, but you lose humanity. And so there was a real this was a real slick marketing machine that they were woefully unprepared. They way oversold everybody. They way oversold everyone, which is crazy because they cut the WWE talent off. The WWE talent mostly sold out the first day, and they really cut them off to the low numbers. But the bottom line is they didn't properly give the time needed. When you give Cody Rhodes an hour or a 40-minute segment, that's nothing, because again, when you give someone a 40-minute segment, it doesn't mean they're working for 40 minutes. There's always that 5-minute before and after buffer where they're not working. So a 40-minute segment is really a 30-minute segment, assuming they arrive perfectly on time. And then you get one or two nudniks up there who tell their life story, and there goes the whole time.
Yeah. And it makes you wonder, like day one, I think 95% of WWE talent sold out. Then like a week to 2 weeks later, including Cody and Punk, they put everyone back on sale. They announced it, Wednesday at noon, there's limited tickets available. Kind of makes you wonder if those extra tickets that they found to put on sale was completely just greed driven and just them throwing out the whole ratio of what they could fit. Because like they sold extra tickets and then they couldn't satisfy all the tickets. So that wasn't a great idea.
Because these companies know there are certain people who just really don't know how to navigate. I'm getting political here a little bit, sorry. But there are people who don't really know how to navigate institutions, financial situations. There are some people who think that if they buy this ticket and they missed out somehow, that they don't know the process for how to get a refund. They don't know how. There are people who've never done a chargeback on their credit card in their life, or really don't understand how to navigate those systems, or don't have easy access to the instruments to make those decisions. And so it's you see, look, this is we've talked about this a little, and I'm going to get really serious for a second. This is an industry. This is a hobby that sometimes does prey on people of limited intelligence, people who are disabled. That's a big chunk of this hobby, and it's really ignorant and foolish to pretend that it's not. And so and there's always a segment of people at these at these cons who are intellectually disabled, who do have a hard time navigating institutions, and those people will have a hard time requesting and receiving refunds because they have a hard time navigating institutions. And so those people are being doubly screwed over by the fact that now they have to figure out how to get a refund. And it's not easy for everyone. For me, for Dana, for I imagine a lot of our listeners, we've gotten refunds from places. You know how to be a Karen. You know how to put your foot down and make sure things happen. Call your bank, whatever. But you have to understand there are people who don't really know how to do that kind of stuff. And on one hand, you could say, sure, you got to figure things out in life. On the other hand, you got to say, hey, wait a second. These companies, number one, they know who their friggin' clients are. Absolutely do. because they've done market research. And number two, they fully expect a certain percentage of the people who didn't get what they paid for to not request a refund. That's how it's the same reason why companies love selling gift cards, because they know a certain percentage of people never spend them. This kind of overselling figures into the calculus of their business 100%. And so it's very distressing to see a company do something like that, where they basically oversold everyone, didn't care one bit, and then let the chips fall where they may. Oh, you can get a refund, knowing that there's a certain percentage of that population who can't or won't do that. And it just sucks. And so while, we got everything we paid for, okay, I had personally, and I sound angry right now. I met Hulk Hogan. I had a great time. I met CM Punk. I had a great time. LA Knight, great time. I got everything I paid for. My photo ops came out great. My autographs came out great. I got everything I paid for. But I talked to enough people in line, and I saw enough going on around me, and I saw enough on social media that it just sucks. And it sucks that and Fanatics can throw their hands up in the air and as PR, and they can say, "Oh, wow, more people showed up than we expected. Oh, we're very sorry. Cody had to get a flight to Florida." Go to hell, honestly. Because it's like Cody's appearance in Florida materialized out of thin air. They knew it was coming. These things are booked very far. And I hate lying. I hate misleading. It's infuriating. So anyway, any final thoughts on Fanatics?
Everything was smooth. I got beyond the stuff that wasn't smooth. If you know how to navigate a con like we do, you get what you pay for, basically. WWE talent was all friendly. Most, they would greet you with a handshake, CM Punk with a fist bump. A couple people, I saw a couple of comments, fans weren't happy that the female talents had a no touching policy. For me personally, I split a lot of these photo ops with Ira. So for me, the no touching policy means an easier way to Photoshop Ira out of the photos. So, I was all for it. That was nice and easy. Everyone seemed happy to be there. And I'll speak for myself. Sean can speak for himself. All these complaints, I agree with his passion 100%. It's not right to oversell and just sort of throw your customers to the wolves and figure whatever happens, happens. If they're back next year, which they've already sort of alluded to that they will be, they made a post saying, let's do it again next year. And I would imagine they've already made reservations on the Javits Center to do so. I imagine I'll be there. If the WWE talent isn't great, I would have more money in my pocket to throw around on athletes. I think one way or another, I'd probably be there. How about you, Sean? Would you go back?
Well, here's the ugly truth about my personality is that even though I am very turned off by their business practice, and I have this every year, every October after New York Comic Con, I'm like, I'm not doing this anymore. I hate this. This takes years off my life, and then I end up going back the next year. Because ultimately, this is the truth about the super collectors in our hobby. Dana, you can take the words out of my mouth right now. What is the single factor that draws people like us to shows? FOMO,
combos, as Class 316 would call it, like, drugs, chores, needing the fix of combos.
Well, the guests.
That too.
If they have the guests that I need, I will be there. If they don't have guests that I need, I will not. And then no matter, because here's the truth between the difference between us, people like me and Dana, and some of the people who are first time con goers. I know enough about how the system works that I can navigate that system, take shortcuts, take advantage, cheat a little bit if I have to, and get what I paid for because I know how to navigate the system. I know how to speak to someone who's running a line to make sure that I get in. Okay. I'm not worried about myself here. And that's the ugly truth of it. People like us are okay because we find ways to work the system, we do. And that's why when I was bringing up the thing with the ADA cheaters before, it's because I fully anticipate more and more and more and more people to be getting those ADA stickers until everyone's ADA at these shows. And then who gets hurt? The real people who are in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
The real people with unseen disabilities who are genuinely disabled. Those are the people who really get hurt, because eventually the public catches on and begin to exploit the system. It's what happening at the Disney parks now. So many people were lying and claiming to be disabled that they dramatically scaled back their services for people with disabilities, and now people who genuinely have disabled are not receiving services at the parks and are really upset about it. And there's a whole social media campaign about it. There's already a backlash in other segments of society about this. And it's only a matter of time before this hits the cons, because at NYCC, you're going to see more people with disability pass. And then the next one, until 70, 80% of the people go, because why wouldn't you? Because if the option is not getting what I paid for, then why wouldn't I take advantage in some way? And so it's these companies, because they're too dense. I'm not going to say that. They're too lazy to come up with an accommodation that makes sense or that's efficient. They just want to throw them in with the VIPs. They're actually they're providing incentives for other people to cheat. Because if the option is, and I'm going to be totally honest, if the option to me in the future is cheat or not get what I pay for, I'm going to cheat.
Oh, yeah. Slap the sticker on me now.
Because fundamentally, I am owed what I paid for. It is not my fault that you run your convention like an imbecile because you don't know how to properly organize people. Now, I'm not going to sit here and obviously how you organize a real ADA accommodation entirely depends on the space and the layout. But the truth of it is, the way these shows are laid out, the way that, especially with this show, the way the traffic flow was a friggin' nightmare. People with disabilities couldn't navigate the show floor. There were whole sections of the show floor that were inaccessible. There was no carpet. There were cables running across the floor that weren't even taped out. I actually tripped over a guardrail that was untaped. It was just the bottom leg of a guardrail was untaped. Now I just said, I'm being a klutz, I'm tripping. Someone who's in a wheelchair or on crutches, forget it, could get genuinely injured. The show, again, had awesome guests. They ran it like boobs, and they really, really, really need to do a better job because I imagine that there are plenty of people out there who are super pissed about how this show was run.
Yeah, and I think the people that are mostly pissed are the collectors. The people that just went to see the celebrities, they're happy. And I think it was honestly the greatest assortment of talent that you could actually pay to meet. It's just a shame that it wasn't organized better, so everyone that paid to meet them got what they paid for.
It's such an easy thing, fundamentally, to keep a schedule, to make and keep a schedule. I know that things come up. What the problem with these companies do is they don't plan for the eventual. There will always be a talent who is delayed, a talent who cancels, a talent who vanishes 5 minutes before they're supposed to appear because they got stuck in a conversation with. These things are inevitable. They always happen. So you have to plan a contingency or some kind of buffer, and they just don't. This was the tightest schedule for any talent I've ever. They had talents booked for 20-minute segments. I've never seen that before to show. Never.
No.
It's one of those things they thought they can get away with it, and I think largely they did, because again, what ends up happening at these things is the people who are most hurt. And look, I'm using the word hurt here. No one is severely hurt by not getting an autograph or a photo op. Let's not kid ourselves. But the people, in terms of hurt, in terms of not getting what they paid for, the people who were most affected, how about that, by these policies were the people who were least likely to be able to remedy that. And that to me sucks. And that's honestly one of the things, going way back to what we were talking about in other episodes, one of the things I loved about Marked Out, always, way back to 2007, was being able to advocate for people against people who had way more money than them and way bigger voices than them, who were customers who were right, but who were being screwed and steamrolled and bullied in these kinds of situations. Now, I'm not saying that Fanatics is steamrolling or bullying anyone. I'm not saying that, because in this case, Fanatics is so big, they don't even have to respond to customer complaints.
No.
They just don't. And so you'll see, I've seen things on social media with people complaining, but the truth is, they have a lot of money in the bank. They have big time contracts with big names. They pay big money. They're one of the major players in the memorabilia market, like it or not. And with that, unfortunately, again, comes with a degree of lack of accountability. How about that?
Yeah.
So I don't want to make it seem like I was super down. It's funny because I came into this podcast thinking overall I had a pretty good time at Fanatics. I had great conversations in line with people and met a lot of people who were interesting. The talent were awesome. Talent were a lot of fun. It's just the certain things, and I think part of it is that you and I, and we discussed in advance, a lot of these things you could see them coming a mile away, and they did nothing to prevent these kind of things from happening. It's a funny. You were even nervous that you weren't going to get Pete Alonso because they only look, and rightfully so. They budgeted him 10:30 to 11. They didn't even start him until 11. I could understand why you were sweating.
Yeah, usually I would always think that, they're not going to refund people. They would just extend the time. They work that out with talent, hopefully in advance, that, if you have to go overtime, this is what you get. And I always would figure, they're not going to leave people hanging. But they did on Friday with Brunson, I heard. That was the word going around. So I figured with a 20-minute block on Alonso, it was quite easy to get screwed.
And at the end of the day, Pete took care of business, and that was that.
Yep.
But it's crazy.
But yeah, Sean, just to tie it into the whole WWE talent at Fanatics Fest, you were mentioning how we were like, what you were saying, we were almost the voice of the voiceless on Marked Out before a certain Chicago superstar was, huh?
In a way, yeah. I mean, that's something that I took that I always took seriously, because like I can have a big mouth. I'm the kind of person, if you meet me, I'm quiet until I can't be anymore, or I don't have to be. And if someone is fair and honest and decent, I never have a problem with them. But there are certain things that really, 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 really are frustrating. And seeing the frontline workers for the con or for Epic Photo Ops get abused by the fans because they were thrown to the wolves by their employers is it's one of those things that just it hits me in the guts, and I really hate seeing it. Or seeing fans left shrugging their shoulders and totally confused in these lines because they're given no information, because the line situation was very confusing. And again, though, what it does is it provides incentive for people to educate themselves about how cons are run and to do their homework in advance. You can't just go to a con and hope that they're going to provide information to you. You have to be proactive in getting that information. And look, one of the reasons why we're doing this podcast, and one of the exciting things about doing this podcast, is that we can help people navigate these things and actually get what they pay for.
Agreed. Well said.
I didn't expect to build a soapbox here, but here we are. So I think that wraps it up for Fanatics.
Yeah. I thought they'd do better next year.
Yeah, and I hope they learn from this ultimately, because they're going to be around in this space for a while. It seems like they're going to be doing more cons. Hopefully they hire someone and pay them well to plan a floor space that takes into consideration traffic flows, that to better understand how to properly block appearance times out. Hire someone with experience in this arena. There are plenty of promoters out there who have experience in this area. Hire one. I'm sure they'll do it on a consulting fee. So if not as an employee. So yeah, that wraps up this one. I mean, it's funny. We thought we weren't sure whether we were going to have enough to talk about with Fanatics Fest, but I think we did all right.
I'd say so, yeah.
So so next week we are going to air part 2 of our interview with Ken. I've had a chance to listen to the whole thing back. It's better than I even remember when we were recording it. I'm really happy with the way the first part came out. And so that second part will air next week after this one. That'll be episode 9. And then we're heading into the fall. And so just to wrap things up, if you're shopping for autographs, please check out www.markedoutcollectibles.com. You can check out our eBay store at marked-out-collectibles or our sister eBay store at ny-collectibles. To contact us for any reason, please email markedoutcollectibles@gmail.com or join the Marked Out Collectibles official marketplace on Facebook. If you enjoy this podcast or if you have comments, you can leave us comments on YouTube. You can please give us ratings on Spotify, give us ratings on Apple Podcast, or leave a review on Apple Podcast, or join us and join the discussion on these topics on the Marked Out Collectibles official marketplace on Facebook. We have a couple of private signings coming up. We have our big exclusive signing with Barbara Bain. Dana, you've spent the past couple days coming up and really editing and coming up with some absolutely stunning images from her career.
Yeah, I'm convinced that we have and will have the absolute best prints and products on the market for Barbara Bain. If you are a fan of her, if you're a fan of Space 1999 or Mission Impossible, or you just want a nice little investment piece from a 93-year-old, well, soon to be 93-year-old actress, TV icon, I mean, we have a ton of options for you. You won't be disappointed.
Yeah, I was able to snag a relatively inexpensive mint on card Barbara Bain action figure from the 70s to get signed. That's for myself, by the way. It's not for any of you vultures. So I'm pretty excited. I think it's such a rare opportunity to work with classic television royalty of an era when there's only a handful of actors from that era still with us. You're talking like Shatner, Dick Van Dyke, Barbara Bain. Very few are alive from that era, and it's thought by some to be the most important sort of most culturally meaningful era of television. So. Yeah, it's gonna be. I'm so excited. It's gonna be super cool. So that Barbara Bain signing, all orders and all items to us, if you're gonna mail in, are due October 23rd. Please get the orders in. We also have a private signing with WWE Hall of Famer and ECW co-founder Paul Heyman, the legend Paulie Dangerously. All items and orders are due for that one by November 7th.
Yeah, so, I really hope that people are aware of how rare of an opportunity that is, I should say. He was at Fanatics Fest. No one got near him. He was on the stage doing his panel. Like, this is not a common signing. Tom Unger hit the home run of the lifetime with this one. And
absolutely. Paul Heyman was not allowed to sign at Fanatics Fest.
Yeah. So if you are not on Long Island in November to attend this in person, definitely take advantage of what we're offering. We have those prints multi-signed for a steal of a price. You can mail your stuff in. Paul Heyman is not going to do a lot of these. To go back to old marked out terminology, he will not become a Virgil, I guarantee you.
What's the other one and done? That's the other marked out term, one and done.
Yeah, I think that's about it.
Yeah, we had our own language on marked out at some point. It was a special time. So so that's it for this week. Thank you guys for listening. Our listening stats have been increasing every single week, getting really, really, really positive feedback. It's really cool. I really love getting people's feedback and having people ask for things or ask for us to talk about stuff. And this is really a privilege to be able to use the experience that we've had in this hobby to to have some fun with it. And talk about this stuff that not everyone knows. So, thank you for listening so far.
Yes,
so
thank you.
So, for Marked Out Collectibles and markedout.com, I'm Sean.
And I'm Dana.
And we will see you next week with Ken.